Up eyes on the fist clench. Y'all know who this is and how we do this. It's Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. comes to you live and direct. We had soul folks with us as the Slauson Girl, the spirit of making history, taking history, and taping history.
So we are here in Leimert Park with the Honorable Fred Hampton Jr. You've been in Los Angeles for a couple of days, having some meetings and doing some film screenings for Judas and the Black Messiah. How has LA been treating you so far?
The embrace every time I come back, it's phenomenal. I can't. I don't know how long. I don't know how long time lapse it's been since I've been, but it's it seems like yesterday, but at the same time, I get a reality check. I see like similar to like leave Chicago, different places. In regards to like the gentrification, aka land grab, you start saying, when this get built? When this get built? But it's always, open arms, yeah.
So you and your mother were brought in for cultural accuracy on the film Judas and the Black Messiah, which centers what happened to your father, the assassination of your father, Fred Hampton. Rest in peace. How important was it for you and your family to be brought in for accuracy on Judas and the Black Messiah?
I think it's extremely important. In fact, it was a term Ryan Coogler had articulated this term called a cultural expert. And something the black community, and I guess, colonized people in general, it's a discussion that we're deprived of recognizing the significance of such discussion as a culture. I guess to help put it in context, there's a clip where Denzel Washington is speaking about regards to movie making. He says something to the effect that Martin Scorsese can probably make a Steven Spielberg film. He said, however, there are cultural differences. And not until you hear that term and people dismiss it, but you hear different terms about, certain periods of time, like the jazz had a certain culture, bebop, the culture that goes with it. And in fact, ironically, one of the lines from Daniel Kaluuya, who portrayed Chairman Fred, he said the term revolutionary culture. And that's a dynamic, like in the way a culture, how you interact with each other, everything down from the food to relationships, how you deal with each other, how you deal with contradictions, so on and so forth. And even in different religious institutions, you say, no, that's not how it may be offensive in one instance, but somebody say, no, that's part of their culture, how they relate. And that's something that we're deprived of. So it was significant that we be on the set to interact with each other and stress, like even the body language, because there's a politic and there's a culture to the party, how they interacted with each other. And so to be right there and stress things that from the naked eye or of someone from an apolitical viewpoint, say, I don't see the significance of that. We say, no, that's the way the party operate. I recall one instance we talked about even how the Black Panther Party dealt with guns. The discipline, party discipline, how you dealt with it. And that was something that that was one of the points we had to stress. So again, it was extremely significant that we be on the scene, and not just in regards to like my family, but the politics of the Black Panther Party.
Where do you think the Black America would be in 2025 if our Black revolutionaries were not targeted by the government in the 1960s, 1970s, and either held as political prisoners or outright murdered?
We recognize that revolution is a process. It's not, as Minister U.E.P. Newton said, it's not a dinner date or whatever. It's a process. So it's ongoing change. It's ever developing. So because the reality is, we didn't get put in this situation overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. It's continuous battles. So idealistically, I would say, it would be ideal to say, okay, put a pinpoint or a date, we will be free. But still engaged in the struggle, still battling. Because capitalism, similar to like say the coronavirus, it'll morph into different, mutate to different dynamics. It'll go dormant for some periods of time, but it's ever developing, you know. And the Chairman Mao Zedong spoke about that he said the system will attempt to rear its ugly head over and over.
What advice would you give to young people who are organizing, especially on college campuses, but are experiencing a lot of pushback from administration and also some people in the media?
Young people in general, I would just combat liberalism. Again, combat liberalism. You know, in other words, a lot of times, you don't want to say certain things because you don't want to offend people. You get to struggle with that. The Black Panther Party was a generation that literally, there was a time period that articulated to their parents, and that we love you, we respect you. However, we end up with these white Jesuses on the wall, so on and so forth. They stood up, and because a lot of times you can enslave or colonize people, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you can break one generation, and people can pass it down, and you come around. A lot of times people go along with it and say, well, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. So again, combat liberalism, and particularly those speaking in regards to different educational institutions. Struggle to marry theory and practice. Again, to wed theory and practice, not just a bunch of words and terms, Chairman Fred would talk about, we just ain't talking about just reading a bunch of books, you know what I'm saying? We got to get out in the community. In fact, today with us, the Black Panther Party Cubs, we just talked to some potential new membership, and they had sent their 6 weeks of political education, which had to do 6 write-ups from Free MR Radio. And one potential membership said, was this submitted? I said, yeah, it was submitted. However, you have to also do, we refer to as Cub community service. You have to hit the streets. You have to make those mistakes. You know what I'm saying? Because it's one thing to read about certain dynamics, but to be able to wed that theory and that practice, to be able to make mistakes. We're struggling for self-determination. So as Malcolm X has stated, that even our mistakes belong to us. So don't fear, well, I don't want to say this, I don't want to do this because I might make a mistake. Again, wed theory and practice.
Do you feel like the Black community has healed from the COINTELPRO tactics and, kind of like the intense level of repression that, the generation before us have experienced? In terms of healing, we know the history, we know what happened, the struggles, but do you feel like enough has been done internally in the community for us to heal from these traumatic experiences?
One of the inabilities for the Black community in particular is to heal from the ongoing war that's been waged upon our people. Under such euphemisms, slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, so on and so forth. But I'm particularly speaking in regards to the infamous COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program. For that not to even be, to talk about healing, to even for those who implemented the attacks, the system that implemented the attacks, to at least acknowledge it. One of the disadvantages that we are in our community are subjected to is a non-acknowledged war. A non-acknowledged war. In other words, you can look at other communities who have been oppressed or subjugated. It's at least they have the advantage of acknowledged war. Say for instance, Nazi Germany. It's acknowledged that under tenure, then Führer of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, and the SS and the SA, that they created the ghettos. The script has been flipped in our community somehow that we created the ghettos. And even what happens to such organizations as the Black Panther Party, some people try to devalue it, minimize it with internal differences, so on and so forth. But to officially acknowledge that dynamic about a war being waged on us, and that's something that we're deprived of, as well as also. In addition to that, it is ongoing. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be the straight out bullets, or Chairman Mao referenced the sugar coated bullets. in the various forms of chemical biological warfare, aka the crack cocaine. So this ongoing aspects of a war that's being waged upon our people. So it's difficult to heal. I think Malcolm X, he gave an analogy. Like if a knife is in your back, you know what I'm saying, and someone, the knife is still in there, even if they pull it out halfway, it's still there, it's ongoing. So in essence, the healing, you know what I'm saying, healing process is something that's difficult to address. In fact, we have to still carry the baggage and still engage in battle. Yeah.
LA, just like a lot of inner cities around the United States, are like the perfect microcosms to analyze like the Black experience in America, at least from, you know, poor, marginalized Blacks, because, you know, our Blacks with money can kind of pivot a little bit, sidestep. And so, are you familiar with the story of the Los Angeles Black Panther Party in 41st and Central? And Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, who were murdered at UCLA in 1960.
January 17, 1969, UCLA campus, Deputy Minister of Defense Bunchy Carter, Deputy Minister of Education John Huggins, yes.
And so, how significant would you say that, you know, their stories and the history of the Los Angeles Black Panther Party is to the overall history of the Black Panthers?
It's extremely important. The deal is to put in historical as well as political context. The COINTEL program, you know, architected by former director of the FBI, William Sullivan, created by the former director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. The former U.S. Attorney, John Mitchell, has said that the Black Panther Party was the #1 threat to internal security to the U.S. since the Civil War. And J. Edgar Hoover said the Black Panther Party had to be destroyed by the end of 1969. These were strategic hits, who they hit, when they hit. You know what I'm saying? So the assassinations of Deputy Minister of Defense, Apprentice Bunchy Carter, Deputy Minister of Education, John Huggins. When you talk about that time, when people hear terms like warfare and strategic strikes and propaganda bombs, they can correlate it to abroad. You know what I'm saying? Like even when people hear about, you know, agent provocateurs, so on and so forth, they automatically relate it to, you know, some sort of Russia 007, you know, some spies, so on and so forth. But this organization basically ranged from ages 14 to 24 years old that shook U.S. imperialism. I mean, this is the big kahuna of capitalism. Shook at its knees. In fact, you can correlate certain moves. I think it was actually like June or July 68 or 60, it was maybe 68 or 69. Had the most intensified, largest draft, and they swept LA. They swept LA. They knew the potential of certain forces, and just for those I know, speaking different, you know, age ranges. The draft, you know, I know some people hit draft. I automatically think about the NFL, it's a football draft. But this is a climb. This was a time when it was common terms: go fight in the war, or go to jail. Those were your quote unquote choices. And the draft was implemented. You know, so everybody able-bodied was they coming through, locking you up, and they seen the potential soldiers here. You know what I'm saying? It was like the most intensified, largest draft. They hit Los Angeles, came through and swept people. You know again, and so the hits they did was strategic strikes. Like you hear like even in the recent history. I think there's a discussion not too long ago. What they say, the Secretary of Defense supposedly mistakenly leaked it over the Telegram, one of those apps, about a strategic hit on one of the leaderships. Was it Yemen? I forgot where it was at. But you hear about different under Trump's last tenure when he's president, on 45th president, and you hear about these different missiles, how they go different places. They can strategic strike. They can go get who they want to get. Try to imagine that. You know what I'm saying? When we talk about certain, you know what I'm saying, put that in context. When I posed this statement about the Black Panther Party had to be destroyed by the end of 1969, it was strategic hits. Who they hit, where they hit them at, And so it's hard for a lot of people to grasp that. In fact, say, okay, just some police doing. Even with the assassinations of Deputy Chairman Fred DeFisk and Lamar Clark, December the 4th, 1969, 41st Central, December 8th, it was boom, boom, boom. In fact, I forgot this one guy, one FBI agent who was in Chicago, his father in Los Angeles. Forgot the last name, it might have been Holman, don't quote me on that last name. But so again, the Los Angeles chapter, again, this again, not to subjugate it to just Los Angeles, but the government, they knew who to hit, who to lock up, who to imprison, and I mean they took account the psychological profiles, the potential, the climate, everything. It's similar to the era of chattel slavery. When we were kidnapped and colonized, they knew who to put in Virginia in the tobacco fields and who to put in Mississippi the cotton fields. They took into account our physical makeup, our MO, who to leave in Haiti. You know what I'm saying? During the seasoning period. And it's a science to that, you know what I'm saying? So it's a science to the strategic hits with dismantling the Black Panther Party.
Okay. How does the Black community continue to heal in 2025 from, the trauma that we have endured?
I think it's, one of the mantras of I think the Alcoholics Anonymous say the first step in addressing the problem is recognize that we have a problem, and to call it out, and not in a defeatist sort of form, like just we doomed, but it's a certain amount of freedom in fighting back. It's a cleansing process to acknowledge it. I recall example of my poetry. One of the elders, she said, Chairman, I like your poetry. She said, but you be cursing, you be profanity being you, and later on, and I told her, I said, I quoted the party line. I said, well, the party position is that profane terms for profane times. And then the study came out. White people had said that they had said profanity releases a certain amount of stress. So the same lady, the same elder, she said, did you see that? I said, oh, now it's legitimate. The studies say to release it. It's toxic on how much stuff we hold, not to even talk about that, not to even acknowledge it. You know what I'm saying? There's no inability to articulate it. You see situations like what the old example, they say when the brother go to work, the white man beat him down so bad, he come home and take it out on the family. You know what I'm saying? It's toxic. So just the release of it, acknowledging it, and that conversation, not in the way of just venting, but you know what I'm saying, just put it in historical and political context. I say, because a lot of times we take being subjugated subjectively, we take it personal, like it's as opposed to this is a system, that's that needs and breeds, for our people to be exploited. It was birthed up for that. But you also taking that narrative, but also looking at the history of resistance. To try to, that's imperative. I can't tell you how many situations when I was held captive. I'm a former political prisoner, and reading Solidad Brothers, Field Marshal George Jackson, and just some of the battles and see how, how he challenged, how he stood up. You have to gain a different definition of death, a different definition of living. To be able to distinguish reactionaryism from revolution, stealing from liberating, existing from living. It's once you arm with that, it's a different feeling. Yeah, it's a cleansing process.